Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ontario Cryptids. I hope you all had a lovely week and are enjoying your weekend. I'm going to be busy tending to the yard and getting the deck ready for summer. So I'm going to have some busy weekends ahead. If you have an encounter story that you would like to share, then please forward your stories to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story with like-minded people. If you've been enjoying the content, why not take a quick second to hit that subscribe button? By subscribing, you'll never miss out on the latest episode, and you'll be joining a community of like-minded individuals who share your interests. Let's keep this journey going together. Thank you for your support. Now sit back and relax as we begin with today's episode. This first encounter takes place in September of 1970. We're going to be going to Washoe County, Nevada, and the nearest town is Reno. I grew up in northwestern Nevada, along the California border in the foothills of the Sierras. My father was a geologist who preferred working and camping in areas that were as sparsely populated as possible. Between 1970 and 1983, I had a number of encounters in Nevada, California, and Washington states. I plan to submit them individually in chronological sequence so that I can provide as much detail for researchers as possible. My first encounter occurred in 1970 in Pavine Mountain, northwest of Reno, Nevada. I was 10 at the time and tagging along with my father, who was hunting deer. We were on the western side of the mountain, close to the California border. We were between two ridges crossing a meadow of the western face of the East Ridge. It was about 3:30 p.m. and the sun was beginning to drop behind the trees on the western ridge. There were no clouds and it was still very bright in the meadow, but the shallow draws between the two ridges was heavily shadowed. As my father and I neared the center of the meadow, we heard an extended call come from the west. We had lived in Kansas City until I was 8, and the call reminded me of the World War II air raid sirens they used for tornado alerts where we used to live. It began low and relatively quiet and rose in both pitch and volume as it progressed. It lasted for about 15 to 20 seconds before rapidly dropping off. After about 10 seconds, the call was repeated. It seemed to me that it was coming from the draw a couple of hundred yards west and downhill from us. Unlike the tornado siren I was familiar with, it had a mellow rather than a harsh or mechanical quality to it. As the second call ended, I asked my father what was making the noise. Annoyed, he told me that it was just the siren from a fire tower and picked up his pace. That seemed reasonable, and I began looking around at the surrounding high grounds for the tower when the call sounded a third time. It seemed to be coming from the draw and seemed to be moving away from us. I caught up with my father and, being a curious 10-year-old, asked him in rapid succession where the tower was and if he smelled any smoke. He replied that it was on the other side of the far ridge and that they were just testing the siren. I told him I thought the call was coming from the draw, and at that point was told to shut up. As the call sounded a fourth time, even further away, my father listened to it and then decided to call it a day. We walked to the Jeep and drove home without any further incident. This one takes place August 8th of 2023. We're going to be headed to Clinton County, Missouri, and the nearest town is Holt. I was taking my dogs outside and I've been taking a spotlight with me because there has been a lot of coyote activity. I was scanning around with the spotlight and about 300 feet in front of me is a clearing for a soybean field. I shined the light past there and seen two sets of glowing eyes, so I shined back, and from my perspective, these eyes were at least 7 feet tall. When I held the light on them, they both hid behind a big bush on the right side of the clearing to this field. I watched for a while. They kept peeking their heads out around the bush, so I turned the light off and then back on again, and they'd be there looking back at me. Then they would hide again. That had me pretty shaken up, so I went inside for about 20 minutes and came back out and walked down where I had seen them. They were gone. I was pretty shaken, so I didn't get too close, but it was crazy to see how big they stood. No animal in this area stands that tall and would hide behind a bush and peek out. This next one takes place on September the 5th of 1993. We're going to be headed to Newton County, Missouri, and the nearest town is Joplin. I was a student at the Missouri Southern State College at the time, and a popular hangout was the Wildcat Park. One evening, several students were out there, and a friend of mine asked me to drive them out. Around midnight, we were heading back to campus. I was taking a curve, and as I got into the corner, I saw a large ape-like, human-like creature standing just off the pavement. I would say it was at least 7.5 to 8 feet tall and 350 to 400 pounds. I'm not sure of the color since it was dark. I would say that it was a dark brown, but with the moonlight and the limited visibility, it gave its coat a whitish sheen. The vehicle I was driving was a lifted pickup truck. I was able to see eye to eye with it. The creature appeared to be much taller than the vehicle, but it was either squatting slightly or hunched down a bit. It had very broad shoulders, much larger than anything I have ever seen. They were close to 3 feet across. I looked right into its face, and its eyes were a deep black. They could have been brown and appeared darker due to the lack of light. This one takes place in the fall of 1964. We're going to be headed to Richland County in South Carolina. And the location is somewhere around Fort Jackson. I just read a report from South Carolina, and not far from where this happened is Fort Jackson, near Columbia, South Carolina. Fort Jackson is an army base. While I was serving in the army on Fort Jackson, something happened that might be related. We were on a training mission for escape and invasion. I was supposed to escape through the enemy lines and make it back on my own. This was about a 7 or 8 mile walk through the woods alone. As I remember, the incident happened at 7 p.m. just after dark. There was no moon. It was the darkest night I've ever spent in the woods alone. Being from West Virginia and hunting all of my life, this did not bother me too much. As I made my way down a fire lane at around 2 a.m., I come to a crossing of fire lanes and stopped to rest for a minute and get my bearings. Back then, there was no lights coming from Columbia or Fort Jackson to direct your way. I was about one step past the crossing, resting, trying to decide on the way to go, when I heard something coming. Immediately, I thought another person was coming. I was happy that I would have someone to be with this dark night. I could not see my watch or my hand in front of my face, only a faint white sand-lined path. I waited until this thing, or maybe two things, was within a few steps of me. Then I said, "Who goes there?" This thing went to its left in a flash. It went about 50 to 75 feet away and just stood there. Then I heard what sounded like someone talking backwards in a sort of growl as I was standing there confused about what was going on. In about a minute or two, I heard this thing come back towards me, so I took one step to my left and knelt down as it rounded the corner. Then I stood up and said, "I got you now." That's when all hell broke loose. It took off running, crashing through the brush like a train. This is when I got really scared. The hair on my neck raised, and I started to speak, but was unable to. I said to myself, "Boy, Get out of here now. I must have run half a mile or so to my left and stopped to see if this thing was coming. I only stopped for a second and started running again, luckily in the right direction. I ran upon an airport sergeant who had a fire built and a truck waiting. I never wanted to see a person so bad before. That's going to wrap things up for today. I hope you all enjoy these encounter stories. Now for some self-promotion. Join our exclusive YouTube membership program and unlock a trove of perks. The perks grant you access to special emojis, membership badges, direct interaction with our members and myself, as well as early access to my content plus more. Don't miss out on the adventure and become a member now and join us today. It's time to acknowledge our OC members, and I would sincerely like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the current members: Elizabeth, Jim, Diana, and Teresa. Your support is truly appreciated, and it's your collective support that makes our channel thrive. Thank you for all that you do. If these stories reminded you of an encounter that you may have had, then please forward them to OntarioCryptids@gmail.com. I would be honored to share your story on this channel. Thank you all for listening until the end. I truly appreciate it. Please hit the like button on your way out and smash the subscribe button if you're new to my channel. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week right here on Ontario Cryptids.